Alright, for most of you hunting season is already here, for some of you it's around the corner. Today we are going to be building the hunting arrows that I will be using for this 2024 season. And I've decided to go with the Easton 6.5mm. The Easton 6.5mm is a standard size arrow shaft, 6.5mm. It is made of AccuCarbon, which is Easton's carbon that they make in-house at their facility in Salt Lake City, Utah. They do come pre-fletched with these blazer vanes. They also come in 3 different straightnesses. They come in the Bowhunter series, which is a .005 straightness. They come in the Hunter Classic, which is the .003, and then they also come in a match grade, which is .001. I have previously shot the Easton Sonic 6.0s, which is a 6mm shaft. I absolutely love those arrows. I wanted to get more for this hunting season, and apparently everybody else loves them too, because they're sold out almost everywhere. I was trying to find some match grade ones, and I was having a hard time. I had to special order them, and they wouldn't be here on time for when I needed them. So I went to my local shop, East Hill Outdoors in Orono, Ontario, and I picked up the Easton 6.5mm. So what we're going to do is, I usually buy the shafts, a dozen shafts on their own. These are sold individually at the store and they come pre-fletched. I am going to cut these fletchings off and get all the glue off the end, and I'm going to wrap these arrows with my new custom Perth County Archery arrow wraps. These are really wicked. It's a white wrap with a black tree line, which is going to fade into the rest of the arrow. I'm going to install brass inserts. I like putting weight up front. The broadheads I'm going to be using, mostly mechanical and 1 or 2 fixed blades, are going to be 125 grains. These are 50 and 75 grain break-off brass. They come as a full 75. You can snap off the end here and make it a 50. I've always thrown the full 75 grains right into the end of my arrow. This year I'm changing things up. I'm making things a little lighter to see how we do, so we can be a little bit faster. So I'm going to break off the end and use the 50 grains of brass. On top of the wraps, I'm going to be using the AAE Max Stealth Vanes. I've shot these for years. I love them. They are my favorite vane right now, and I have no reason to change. So white vanes with white wraps means easier to see what kind of blood you get when you put one through an animal, which is going to be great. I'm using the Bits & Burger arrow fletching jig with a right clamp, which is going to give me about a 2.5 degree offset. I'll weigh them as well when I'm done, so we're looking at approximately being in the 510 to 515 grain range, give or take. We'll find out at the end. So come along and let's build my hunting arrows. Of course, we cannot forget the Nocturnal lighted nocks. I use these every year. They're awesome. These are the universal fit, so they come with bushings to fit in different size shafts, and I've never had any of the bushings come out. So they are a great fit for my hunting arrows, and I love them. Check the regulations in the area that you're hunting and see if lighted nocks are legal. If they are, I highly encourage you to use them. They're great to see where your arrow goes. They're great to see where you hit the animal, and they're even better to find as a beacon later. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut these down to size. I'm a 30-inch draw. I used to cut my arrows down at 28, and although that is a fine length and I am well in front of the rest, I wanted just a little bit more of a clearance when it comes to broadheads. So I'm going to cut these ones to 29. So we're going to do that with the Carbon Express arrow saw. Alright, so once you have your arrows cut, you're going to want to square them. So what I use is, there's different squaring tools you can use. Easton makes a sanding block that comes with your arrows when you buy them. These were sold individually, so they didn't come with a sanding block, but I have a couple already I'm going to be using. Some arrow spinners, like the OMP flight deck, I'm looking to get one of those. It will have a sanding block built into the spinner. So there's different ones out there, but this is the one that I'm using from Easton. And all you're going to do is just take each arrow, make sure you're on a flat surface, rub it a few times on the stone, and make sure you have a nice, clean, sanded cut on the bottom, just like that. You'll see that there's some carbon dust that's left behind. So what you're going to want to do next is get a Q-tip, run the Q-tip through, and get out any of that extra loose carbon that might be stuck inside of your shaft. Okay, once that's done, your sander away. And like I said, you run some Q-tips through just to get all the gunk out. So you're going to want to run that through a couple times. Just make sure you get it all out. Carbon dust is just going to sit in there and not do you any good. So it's better just to get it out. Clean it up, make sure it's nice and clean. That gives a nice surface for your inserts to attach onto. There are many different ways to do this. I've been doing this for about 6 years now, and this way has worked for me. You may disagree with some of the things I'm doing or may do it differently, and that's fine. You do whatever works for you. But this is what I've been doing, and I've had no issues whatsoever with it. So there we go, nice and clean. Now we're going to take the fletchings off. So to do that, I use an X-Acto knife. I just put it up to just the beginning, just a little bit of the blade, and just run it across and get the vane off like that. Just don't go too deep because you'll gouge the carbon. And what I do is I just scrape off, get a little bit closer, get the base off. And then you'll see there's some residue and some glue left behind. You'll see some residue or some glue left behind from the previous vanes. So I just lightly go back and forth and slowly turn the shaft, and that's going to scrape off that layer of adhesive that you want off. Again, you're not pushing, I'm not pushing hard at all. I'm just going back and forth, just at a slight angle to get that adhesive off. And I'm not doing it to the point where I'm going to be gouging or ripping out part of the carbon. Once it's all smooth, your wrap will go around nicely and you won't have any issues. You can also use a wipe. AAE makes a set of Max Clean wipes. You just run those across your shaft to clean it before putting on your fletchings. So we'll just do this to the rest of the arrows here. You wouldn't have to do this if you just ordered the straight up shafts, which again is what I normally do, but this is the situation we're in. That's no problem. If you want this to be a smooth, flat surface at the end, you don't want any bumpy bits of glue left behind. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on the wraps and the fletchings. Once those are done, they dry really fast. I'm using the AAE Max Bond glue. I found the Max Bond glue to do extremely well with putting your fletchings on the wraps, which is great. I've had no issues there, so I continue to use it. I do normally use the epoxy for the inserts. Just remember, if you do use the epoxy, you have to give it the full 24 hours. When I first got my first set of arrows from my local shop, I remember the guy, the Go-Tech there, said, now whatever you do, don't touch these for 24 hours. I was like, sure. Like, that's probably something they tell everybody I'm sure it's fine. And I went home and I left them for a bit, and then I couldn't help myself. So I picked it up and started to screw on a field point, and the insert was starting to spin a little bit, and that's when I knew I screwed up. So I had a couple arrows where the insert was slightly outside of where it should be, and that was my fault for messing around with it. So if you do use the epoxy, make sure you leave it for the full 24 hours. Now I just use the same Max Bond glue. I've used it for my inserts as well, and I've had zero issues. So the epoxy is great, but unless something happens that gives me a problem using the same glue for my fletchings as I do for my inserts, then I'll switch. But for right now, that's fine, so I'm going to keep doing that. So for the wraps, wraps usually come in 4, 6, or 8 inches. This one in particular, you're going to want the symbol pointed at the bottom, so that when you roll it, you're going to get the trees kind of fading into the shaft. So we're going to do that now. Make sure you have a good clean surface to roll on, usually a mat of some kind. This is the Last Chance Archery archer's mat. I love this thing. It's got a lot of diagrams on here that help you remember what to do when you're working on your bow, but it's also a great, nice, smooth surface, soft surface to do this exact thing on. So that's awesome. So we're going to put our first wrap on here. Lay it down. You're going to line up the end of the shaft right where the nock meets the shaft with your wrap. Go very slowly, and as you come around to the other side, when you see the seam there, just run your finger along it, make sure it's down, and then continue. And just go slow at this stage. You don't want to mess this up. You want these to be straight. You want them all to be in the same spot. So just take your time. There's no rush. If you are rushed, then stop and pick a time to do this when you're not rushed. Those wraps look awesome. Shout out to Perth County Archery for all your custom wrap needs. I'm getting some Caribou Media Outdoor wraps made up right now as we speak, so we're just going through some design ideas. So hit up Perth County Archery on Instagram if you're in need of wraps or any kind of custom work. They will set you up. I know some people might be freaking out. Oh my god, what are you doing? You're supposed to spine align them and find the stiff side of the spine. Easton says with their AccuCarbon that they are consistent all the way around with their spine, and there isn't a heavy side. So take that or leave it how you will, but I've had no issues doing it this way. I literally wrap and fletch my arrows and I shoot them. If there's any kind of weird wobble to it, turn your nock a little bit and that should straighten it out. But I haven't really had any issues doing it this way. So there are different ways to do this. Like I said before, you do the way that you want, but this is the way that's worked for me. So to stick these fletchings, the AAE Max Stealth Vanes, you're going to need an AAE Max Weld primer pen. If you do not have a primer pen, these won't stick. It's essentially an acetone pen that will prime the end of the fletchings to get them ready to stick. So you have to use it. Some of them you don't, but these ones you do. So make sure you know ahead of time what you're doing. So what I normally do is I take my clamp and I'll put 2 fletchings in the clamp, and then I'll run the primer pen down both sets of vanes to prime them. It's just a faster way to do it. Put them to the side and do your last one. Okay, then you take your bits and burger jig, get your first arrow, put it in the jig. Make sure that you know what hash mark you're using on these jigs. On the clamp there will be hash marks. I usually go to about the 4th one. That way you're staying consistent when you're doing this. And then you run your bead of glue. Okay. Okay, so I changed it to the 3rd hash mark because otherwise I'm going to hit the trees that are on the logo here. Then you can run your, if you do have a little bit of excess glue that comes out underneath the fletching, just wipe it with a Q-tip, but do it quickly because it does dry very fast. Once it's sit for a little bit, doesn't have to take very long. You just remove the clamp, give it a spin, and you're on to the next one. It's also good to make sure that you remove any excess glue that's on your clamp, because that's going to cause an issue when you go to put your fletchings on. Could get stuck or not seat properly. You want your steering device at the back to be as solid as possible. And then you grab your last one, again, line it up, 1, 2, 3, give it a turn. And again, if you have any excess, just rub it, get your Q-tip, get it off there. A little bit is fine, but you don't want gobs of it on there. Less is more when it comes to glue. Beautifully fletched arrow. The white fletchings with the white wrap. Looks pretty sick. That tree line is awesome. Once you're done that, just set it off to the side and finish the rest, and then we will do the inserts. So I fletched 8. The current quiver I have is a 6-arrow quiver. I'm going to be switching to a 5-arrow tight spot quiver from Sever. I just always loved tight spot, and like the design of this one and how it holds the mechanical broadheads. So I will have 5 arrows and 3 extras just in case, so that'll be nice. I'll have to shoot them to adjust my my sight, because I am increasing a little bit of weight from what I was shooting during the target and 3D days, so I am going to have to change the sight tape. But once I'm set, those arrows aren't coming out of the quiver unless they're being shot at an animal. So the whole practicing is going to go by the wayside a little bit while hunting season's here. I will try and get some practice in when I can, but for the most part, every waking minute that I can get away from work and my other priorities, I will be up in a tree. As I'm sure is the same for most of you. So the last thing that I do after I've put the 3 fletchings on is called tipping and tailing, and that's where you put just a little dab of glue on the tip of each fletching and flip it over and put it on the tail of each fletching, and that just gives a little bit of extra adhesion on both sides. And I've never had an issue with a vane peeling up or peeling back when you do this technique. So it's literally just a small dab of glue, dab, dab, flip it over on the tail side, dab, dab, and dab. There you go. Now we're going to let them sit, dry for a bit while we get our inserts ready to go. So again, these are the Easton 6.5mm brass inserts. They are a 50 and a 75 grain brass. Full size is the 75 grains. And if you break off this little end nub here, that will give you 50. So if you use the whole thing, it's 75. So all you're going to do, I'll show you here, we'll just weigh these real quick. And then you just take your pliers and you break it off. Just like that. Now you've got that piece there. So that's pretty good. They're all within 0.2, 0.3, or 0.5 of a grain of each other, which is pretty consistent. Next, it's very important when you do this next step that you remove the nock at the end of your arrow. So when you're installing the brass inserts, you got to think you're pushing it in the end, which is going to basically create a vacuum of air. You're going to push the air back. If the air doesn't have anywhere to go, it could end up pushing your insert back out. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. So what we're going to do is take out the nock, just like that. So there's steady airflow. You're going to take your glue. Now get either a piece of paper towel or another arrow wipe if you have them, because you're going to get a little bit of glue coming out of the end where the insert goes in. So we're just going to put some of the Max Bond glue on here. Again, if you're using something like Max Bond glue, you got to act fast. Get it in, push it to the end. Wipe off the excess glue. Make sure it's seated right to the edge. That's what we want. And on to the next one. Hammer it down on a hard surface, wipe off the excess. And that's what's nice about the 6mm and 6.5mm brass, is that they have a little bit of a lip at the end, and you know that you're in the right spot when you hammer it down. When you're using something like the 5mm Axis, which is another fantastic arrow, you have to use a tool to insert the insert inside of the shaft to a certain point. So you got to watch to make sure that you install it properly so that your field points and broadheads will reach your insert. Once you get all your field points on, the last stage of the game is I'm going to put the lighted nocks, the Nocturnal lighted nocks on. Alright, so for the lighted nocks, you're going to, like I said, I'm using the Universal Fit, which has on the side here, it has a number of different sized inserts to go in. So if you're using a 5mm arrow, the nock itself, without anything on it, will go right into the end of your arrow. If you're using a 6 or 6.5, you're going to have to use one of the inserts. So the Easton 6.5mm shafts come in a 250 spine, 300, 340, 400, and 500 spine configuration. These are the 300 spine. And again, the bow hunters are 0.005 straightness. These are the classic hunter, which is 0.003, and then there's also a match grade, which is 0.001. So you just slide in the insert itself, and then that's nice and tight, and then you're going to screw in the lighted nock. There we go. Nice solid finish. $514.2, $515, $515.9, $515.4, 515.6. So those are extremely consistent, which is great. That's what you want when you're bow hunting. Now I'm just going to take a shot. So I'll have to re-sight these in for my sight tape. Make sure everything is consistent. Awesome. There you go. There you have it. There is my hunting arrow for 2024. Easton 6.5mm. Looks awesome. I'm working my way through the Easton line. I've shot the Axis for a few years. I went to the Sonic 6.0 last year. Love those arrows. Due to me not being able to get a hold of another set of them, I went to the 6.5s, which is another incredible option. So I will be hunting with these this year. So stay tuned for my results. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell for more videos like this. We got a whole lot more stuff coming down the pipe, gonna hit the table. If you haven't seen the mechanical or fixed blade broadhead videos, make sure you check those out. If you're on the fence about what broadhead to shoot, hopefully that'll help you decide. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.